The opportunity to speak about Bill C-34 today. And it's been said before that weak leaders create hard times. And that's, the bill is meant to deal with foreign interference and the lack of infrastructure. I'm going to speak specifically about that lack of infrastructure in the north. Section B in the summary, the bill is meant to authorize the Minister of Industry, after consultation with the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, to impose interim conditions in respect to the investments in order to prevent injury to national security that could arise during the review. And again, I think it's pretty easy to make the case that this weak NDP Liberal government, after 8 years, and I will also include the members of Parliament from those territories, have put Canadians at risk in the north. And it doesn't, take too long to find articles that are really concerned about this. And I'll even quote from leaders that are actually in the north. It's an article just from a week ago. CSIS warning Inuit leaders about covert foreign investment in the Arctic, documents show. The Canadian Security Intelligence Services, or CSIS as we know it, has warned Inuit leaders that foreign adversaries could gain a foothold in Canada by offering to fill infrastructure gaps in the north. And this is what this legislation says it's supposed to prevent from happening, and good, I guess. But again, this government, this NDP Liberal government's been in power for 8 years. I'll go on. We are making decisions every day that are currently not as informed as they could be about threats and considerations, says Inuit leader Natan Obed. I'll read on. CSIS documents obtained by CBC News show that the agency is trying to grow its presence in the north and deepen its relationship with Inuit communities in response to economic, strategic, and military interests of foreign states in the north. And I find it, I go up to the territories quite often, and it's quite a different perspective when you get it to the north, because, you talk to somebody in the southern parts of Canada, the north of the territories, it's a very far away place, and it is, and they don't really get how serious that the territories take this, because really it's their front yard. They're seeing, the foreign activity increase right in their own yards or front yards. I'll go on. Foreign interference is a significant threat, primarily from China, then Russia. Both desire access to natural resources in the Arctic, like minerals, said one of the CSIS documents released through an access to information request. To date, however, CSIS presence in Canadian or Canada's north in the Arctic has been limited. And I'll go on. The CSIS director, David Vigneault, he visited the region in 2022 and had meetings with local leadership. His talking points for those meetings, released to CBC News, included questions for the leaders about partnering with foreign communication providers. CSIS interests in Canada's north and Arctic stem from our mandated responsibilities to address security threats, including foreign interference and espionage. Talking points say, espionage in our Canadian north, Madam Speaker. These take the forms of activities such as covert foreign investments or partnership arrangements, efforts to interfere in decision-making at all levels of government, theft of research or data, and interference in research agendas or funding. Lastly, there's still incredible infrastructure deficits in the Canadian Arctic, whether it be for airports, for marine facilities, or just network shipping. So again, Madam Speaker, I started off by saying weak leaders create hard times. Indeed, this government has had 8 years to really strengthen what I would say we had a pretty strong approach. A former Stephen Harper government in 2015, we had spent a lot of time, made a lot of investments in the Arctic, and we just haven't seen that continue. So, but this goes beyond sort of what people think of, just security as in the military investments. Arctic sovereignty really refers to people supporting Northerners in the north, to make sure that they have good jobs, that they can have healthy families and healthy lifestyles so they can reside in the north and do so in a strong position. And a way to erode that is to erode the economy, Madam Speaker. When you erode the economy, you erode those investments that are often made as a sort of a a side benefit of infrastructure, or side benefits of industrial development like roads, fiber optic networks, and other really important infrastructure that really we all use. So I'm going to quote, this is from a previous action by the Liberal government. There was a moratorium that was placed on an offshore oil and gas development in the Arctic. And Bob McLeod, then Premier, who's the brother of the current NWT MP in this House, was not very happy about the decision that this Prime Minister made. Hey, look, we're going to shut down all development in the north. The Premier said that there was billions of dollars of investment that simply just got pushed off the table. And those investments would have also impacted, in large part, Indigenous communities. And this is a quote from the Premier. We made the decision to unconditionally share 25% of resource revenues with Northwest Territory Indigenous governments. We are proud to be at the forefront of preserving Indigenous languages. However, this is quoting specifically the moratorium, restrictions imposed on our vital energy and resource sector, 40% of our economy and source of middle-class jobs and incomes for many of our people, are driving companies away. And with that go the jobs that sustain healthy families and community life. Staying in or trying to join the middle class will become a distant dream for many. And so that's from then Premier McLeod. And this is all speaking to Bill C-34. When we have weak economies in our territories because of Ottawa knows best policies, this is what happens. Infrastructure does not get built, and this is what puts us in this precarious position. And that was from Northwest Territories. Now I'm going to go over to Nunavut, and this is just an article from today. It says, Arviat South MLA blasts proposed amendments to federal mining law, and this is the MLA in Nunavut criticizing the current Member of Parliament for Nunavut. During the 3 separate question periods in the Legislative Assembly on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, Arviat South MLA Joe Savakatak asked Premier Akiakok and multiple ministers for their positions on MP for Nunavut's proposed amendments to the Territorial Lands Act. He said if adopted, this NDP MP's plan would impede the growth of mining in the territory and make it harder to increase Inuit employment in the mines. Quote, not everybody wants to be a government of Nunavut worker, Savakatak said. Her position is completely wrong for Nunavut. So, and I say that, Madam Speaker, and the relevance to what we're talking about today. Again, if economies aren't developing and they're retracting, this is what happens. Investments aren't made. We're put into a position where foreign governments can have undue influence because the lack of infrastructure is so, the territories are so desperate to get this infrastructure, needed infrastructure, that it puts us, our security and sovereignty at risk. I'll finish with, and I know I only have about a minute left, Madam Speaker, but just as it relates to the security aspect of it in the military, we've seen even recent quotes from former Liberal MP and General, Mr. Leslie, quote from an article, Canadian forces in desperate need of new spending procurement follow-through, the article says. And so the follow-through piece is imperatively what needs to be done here. This government makes a lot of promises. I've said in the House before, they promised billions to modernize NORAD, but only $45 million's been spent, and I have the documents from the estimates right in front of me. But I'll read from Mr. Leslie. $23.3 billion on the Department of National Defence, but Leslie said the department has a chronic problem with actually using the funds. Over the last 7 years, the Armed Forces has been allocated roughly that amount, but it hasn't been able to spend it all. And the blame for that lies squarely with the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance, and I would add the NDP party to my left. Leslie, recruited in 2015 as a star candidate to write the Liberals' defence and foreign policy platform, is now disillusioned with the government procurement capabilities. So, Madam Speaker, I know my time is basically done. Like I started off by saying, weak leaders create hard times. This week, NDP Liberal government has created hard times for us in the North, and it needs to change. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires. Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Nunavut.
And I'd like to thank the member for his interest in the North and the Arctic. I'm not sure how genuine it actually is. Regarding this act, the Investments Canada Act, I know that when it comes to ensuring that we're doing better to protect individuals, to protect the land, a lot of what we have to do in these pieces of legislation is that it allows for the prevention of certain acquisition of certain things. I know that, for example, in Nunavut, there is a mining company that is not owned within Canada, and a lot of damage is being caused by these mining companies to our lands in our territories. And what we need to do is make sure that there's free, prior, and informed consent so that Indigenous peoples can and have a will and a say in ensuring that legislation like the Investment Canada Act can have an actual positive impact on Indigenous peoples. And I wonder if the member agrees that ensuring free, prior, and informed consent is also included in acts such as these.
The Honourable Member for Prince George, Peace River, Northern Rock.
Well, thank you for the member from Nunavut's question. I guess I would go back to what I started off by saying. The NDP is really the no development party. And even quoting an MLA from Nunavut, not everybody, he said if adopted, the member for Nunavut's plan would impede the growth of mining in the territory and make it harder to increase Inuit employment in the mines. And what the member from Nunavut is actually doing is preventing this infrastructure investment. The very thing that this bill is talking about doing is to encourage investment so the infrastructure gets built, especially in places where it's already lacking in the north. All this member from Nunavut is doing is causing less infrastructure development and less infrastructure to get built.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Shefford. Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague. He mentioned the issue of national security as well and the armed forces. But I'd like to hear if he agrees with me. But aside from the issue of national security, there's in this bill a question of preservation of our economic leverage. We have, well, how will this bill meet expectations to protect our economic levers?
George, Peace River, Northern Rockies.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I mean, the economic development, what we hope for this bill to actually get done is to prevent the foreign interference from really taking hold. A quote about another security issue: Russia is a persistent, proximate threat to North America, and we know that China has growing capabilities and ambitions. I don't think the status quo is going to keep us safe. And I don't know if the House fully knows this, but Russia has made claims to our Arctic sovereignty, the Arctic seabed that we actually claim belongs to Canada. There's many resources that are attached to that territory as well. Russia has reiterated those claims just in March of 2023. It's imperative that we have a strong infrastructure and a strong sovereignty and security in our north.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Guelph.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'd like to build on the security aspect that the Investment Canada Act, as amended, is now providing additional security protections against foreign actors such as China and Russia that are wanting to capitalize on Canada's technological advancements, our skilled workforce, the economy that's really humming along compared to other nations that sets us at risk for security. And could the Honourable Member comment on how we are building our security through the amendments to the Act that's come back to us?
For Prince George, Peace River, Northern Rockies.
Well, Madam Speaker, I guess the big question is, I'm not sure the answer to his question. This NDP Liberal government, after 8 years, makes a lot of promises. Just for NORAD as the example, we've seen billions promised, but only, again, to last count that I have, is about 45 million spent. This government is great at photo ops, great at talking about things and getting things done, but delivery is a problem. Again, 8 years, where have you been for 8 years?